And we are rolling. Hello, welcome to my podcast featuring Brooke. No, I'm just messing, guys. Welcome to the podcast. This is my first and hopefully my last podcast. I don't think that most podcasters have more than one podcast, but I could be completely wrong. I don't listen to many podcasters. But yeah, welcome. This is pretty much gonna be just chaos. I don't even know where to start with what this podcast is gonna be. But welcome. My name is Brooke Seals. For anyone who does not know me or anyone who has not seen my channel, it's just a first-time listener. Hello, what's up? We are now friends. So I just want to welcome you to the podcast because this is the first episode, and this one's kind of different because I'm going to be filming this episode alone, and most of the other episodes I will have my friends on with me. I'll have a guest. I will have them there to be listening to the chaos that is my life abroad, which I will get into what this podcast will be all about in just a second. But yeah, pretty much let's just dive right in. I'll just tell you guys exactly what this podcast is going to be, and that is travel stories. I didn't start traveling solo until this last year, 2021, the summer. I left in April and then I started traveling, and just some chaotic things happen. Of course, you think you go abroad, of course chaos is bound to happen, but some things I don't know. I feel like I made a list of all these memories from different cities as I went. If something funny happened one night, then a few nights later we'd be talking about it and I'd add it to the list. And I just had I had all of these notes because I wanted to have something to tell my family when I got back. You get back from a trip and your family's like, well, how'd the trip go? And you are like, well, it went good. And then they're like, what happened? And then you're kind of lost for words because you can't remember a single thing, yet so much happened from the trip. So to avoid that, I made a list of memories as I went. So that way, when I got in the car, when my mom picked me up, I would have things to actually tell her. And yeah, I realized that I had this list of just memories. And after I got done telling my family and friends about some of them, not even all of them, because, some things that happen you just don't want to talk about. After I got done expressing all of these different stories to them, I realized, what am I going to do with this now? This is just implanted in my head. These are just implanted now in my friends and family's heads. But, I kind of want it to be out there. It sounds a bit crazy, but I don't know. Some of these things are ridiculous, okay? And it's just stuff that's so good that you kind of have to share it. So that's when I decided to come up with the idea of creating a podcast. And also this past summer, my friend Katie got me into listening to podcasts. So we listened to Call Her Daddy, we listened to Ladies and Tangents, Crime Junkie, all sorts of different podcasts. And that really got it spiraling in me that I just wanted to make a podcast. So here we are. Hello, welcome to the Living Abroad pod. We're basically, like I said, we're going to be talking about stories that have happened to me while I've been traveling abroad. And these should be posted on Spotify, Apple Music, and probably some other platforms. And it's also going to be on my YouTube channel. And if you want to look that up, it's just my name. It's just Brooke Seals. But if you do watch it on my YouTube channel, I will have evidence up on the sides of the screen, if I can supply the evidence. But right now, I'm actually in Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica, and I figured there's no better place but my favorite country that I've been to start this series, and I can't wait to just dive right in. But this episode, we're going to be talking about the truth of solo traveling. And I'm just, it's just going to be my introduction podcast. I'm going to be telling you guys what this is all about and how it's going to play out, and we're just going to dive into the beginning of my travels. So yeah, pretty much, I just want to say that some of these stories that will be addressed in this podcast, like I said, nobody has heard some of these, not even my closest of friends. So it'll be fun to get natural reactions from my guest which are close friends, like my close friends hearing these stories for the first time. And I just think it'll be so much fun. But I promise, I just want to make this announcement right now. I promise right now, here you are hearing me, I want this to be as raw as possible. I just love genuine stuff, genuine content. And that's how I try to live my life around being genuine, honestly. Just not being fake in any way, not trying to just get views, none of it. So I promise right here, right now, I'm going to make this content as raw as possible, which means I'm not going to make up stories. That is dumb and ridiculous. I'm not going to exaggerate things for, to get more viewers or whatever. Like, sure, maybe I might make a joke, but like, you guys will know if I'm exaggerating, like if it's sarcasm, in that sense. But like, I'm not gonna make up stuff. This is gonna be raw content. I will, though, even though I'm going to be completely honest and raw, I am going to supply like nicknames of people that like just people that I feel like I should have a nickname over, like if they did me wrong in any way, or like if we had a moment where we were kind of a thing, I'm not going to put their name in the podcast. And I also want to ask in advance that you respect anyone's privacy that I do bring up, and that you don't go to their social media and any of that. We do not need any messiness. This is all just stories, and they're real, but like, I don't want any negativity to be around this podcast. I'm a positive person, and positive people have positive outcomes. So let's make that one of them. If you are not a positive person and you're trying just to be a negative Nancy on someone's podcast, this is not the one to be at. So hasta luego. But yeah, I also want to say that I make no apologies for anything that I do say. Sure, sometimes things come out wrong, and this is going to be unfiltered in the sense that I probably won't cut this unless I have like a long gap where I don't speak or anything like that. But I make no apologies for anything that I do say. I do want to like just say in advance that if I ever do say something quote unquote negative about a country, I'm not meaning it in a negative way. It's just maybe a culture shock, or it's maybe it was just through my eyes, my perspective. So I want to just say that right now. Let's see. I'm going to tell you guys about how I got the name for this podcast, and it is called the Living Abroad Pod, right? It took me a little while to come up with the name because I am a little indecisive, but I finally came up with it when I was deciding that. Let's just start with, of course, the Living Abroad Pod. When you look at that, you say like, oh, it's probably about someone who is living abroad, obviously. So you have that aspect of it. But if you look at how living is spelled, it's Liv'n. And so it's liv'n. So it's like live and abroad. And Olivia is my middle name, and it's kind of what I want to start going by when I go abroad, with this trip being the exception. So with my next trip, I'll start doing it where I go by Olivia or Liv. And so it's kind of just cool to have like that aspect of having an alter ego. And also, I never realized it, but when I go abroad this summer, every time I introduce myself, I was like, hi, my name's Brooke. Like, if it was a foreign person, it could be from Europe, it could be from Latin America, it doesn't matter where, they would look at me and be like, you have a strange name. Like, how do you even pronounce that? And I always thought my name was like so simple, but I have learned that is not the case if you're in a different country. Everyone calls me Brooke, and a lot of people don't even know how to pronounce it, and they forget my name. And so I started to actually develop like not a hatred towards my name, but like a little bit of a dislike towards my name. I think it is very bland, and I think that it's a pretty name, but I don't know. I just feel like it doesn't fit me, and I think like going by Olivia or Liv when I'm abroad will be more fitting. So I think I'm going to start doing that. And that is how the podcast has gotten its name. Next thing I'm going to address is how the titles of the episodes are going to play out. So you will see the title, which will probably be something to catch your attention, but it'll be based on whatever the story is. And then next to it in parentheses, it is going to be the location. And how these episodes are going to be set up is I am going to be talking, let's say we do, like the next episode, I'll just tell you guys right now, it's going to be about Condado, Puerto Rico. And so it'll say in parentheses, Condado, Puerto Rico. And it'll be about all my stories from that location, from that trip. So let's say I go back in the future. That will be a whole different episode that I have. And maybe some locations might have a few episodes if I was there a long time and have like a lot of stories. Because another thing, time length, let's talk about that. I think the time of these episodes are going to be a minimum of 25 minutes to a maximum of an hour and a half. But I'm thinking most of these episodes should be roughly 45 minutes to an hour. Yeah, I also want to make these podcast episodes weekly, so one episode a week, and it will be every Monday. And I'm doing Mondays just because I want to shine a light more on Mondays. Everyone hates Mondays, and I just want something that people can look forward to and that can brighten up their week a little bit more. Yeah, so we've addressed so many things. I'm looking at the list to make sure I don't leave anything out. And it looks like I got it all. So let's just talk about who I am on the surface to get you a little bit of an introduction to me. Who is this person that is talking to you in your ears right now? Like I said, my name is Brooke Seals. I'm 20 years old. I'm from the Midwest. So I live in the U.S. Let's see. I am in college right now. I'm a sophomore, but it's kind of complicated because I'm a 5-year student, double majoring and currently double minoring, but who knows, that might change. But double majoring in international business and marketing with minors in Spanish and environmental sustainability. So I might get rid of that second minor, undecided though. Let's see. Pretty much I came from a big mixed family, being the second oldest. My youngest sibling is 8. My oldest is 22. So I've been around an array of ages, and I come from just a big family in general. Yeah, but who am I on like a deeper level? Let's see. Things to know about me, I'm very ambitious. Very ambitious. I love pushing the limits. I love dreaming big, aiming high. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. I feel like if I've had one personality trait in my eyes, it would be ambition. I'm also a super spur of the moment person. I'm that friend of my friend group that they hit me up for last minute plans because they know I will never say no. Like literally day of, an hour before we're supposed to leave, like I've been asked the day of by my friends, like, you want to go on a weekend trip? And they know I'm not going to say no unless I have a reason such as like work. Because if I have free days, I want to occupy them. I'm a busybody. That's another thing about me. I love to always be doing something. And I just really love living life in the moment. I don't like thinking too far ahead, even though I am a planner, so it kind of doesn't make sense. But I don't know. I like to live life in the moment and enjoy life day by day. And I honestly think that life is pretty great. It's pretty grand. We live in a pretty awesome world. Super spontaneous person. I'm goofy. I like to think I'm funny, but that's kind of biased. I love anything with recreation, being outdoors. I love animals. I actually worked at a zoo for 2 summers. That's a whole nother story. Technically, I guess you could almost say 3 summers because I worked at a zoo not too long ago for a few months. But I love creating, hence the podcast. I love just putting out my work and have it be, I don't know, just knowing that my voice is heard, I guess, because it's not even the fact of like, I don't want to be famous. Like, honestly, do not want to be famous. I want to be known, but not famous. Like, I don't want to have to like worry about leaving the house, Also, I love exploring, hence the travel sense of the podcast. I love travel so much. and I just love seeing different cultures, learning so much that, like, right when you think you know it all, you realize that you don't when you travel, and I just love that. And you guys are going to get to know me a lot more through these stories. So, yeah, you'll definitely get to know my personality and who I am as a person. So let's just dive right in now. We got our little introduction there. We're just going to dive right into the first story. This is not really necessarily a story. It's just kind of a overall sense, like what led me to travel and my first time traveling solo this last year. So this is going to sound crazy, but a huge part of why I decided to travel this year is I got into crystals, right? I never thought I was going to be this person. I always was like, that's so dumb. They don't work. I was just always like skeptic. Like that's just like, relying on a rock. That's a bit crazy to me, right? But I watched this TikTok on Moldavite. I actually just made a video not too long ago about Moldavite. And I kind of explained this, but I will re-explain it for any who didn't hear. I'll just give the gist of it. Pretty much, I got this stone, right? I spent $80 on this little stone. Yeah, my sister Caitlin is like right over there, and she's just listening to me film this podcast. But I spent $80 on the stone. It was super spur of the moment, but I felt like I needed it, right? I was stuck in autopilot. I mean, I was working at a factory, which is not fun. You make good money, but it's not fun. And I was doing my online college because last year everything was online. And I just felt like and then on top of that, I was babysitting for my aunt every single week. I was watching her kids. That in itself was birth control. Love them. But yeah, I was just stuck in autopilot. Every single week was predictable. I was doing literally the same thing for probably 3 months. And I'm not that type of person that can live an autopilot life. It was kind of driving me up a wall. And when I came across this TikTok on Moldavite, it talked about how this rock is supposed to make your life do a 180. And it's pretty much just supposed to take out anything in your life that's not supposed to be there and replace it with all the stuff that is supposed to be there. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, of course, skeptical, because I'm like, it's a rock. Like, that's so dumb. But it was exactly what I needed and exactly what I wanted, and I didn't even know I needed it. So I went with my friend Lauren. We drove an hour and a half away to this rock shop because I wanted to make sure it was legit. And next thing you know, I'm going home with this rock that is literally probably this big, and I spent $80 on it. And for those who didn't watch the video, and I'm just doing the audio, when I say this big, it is probably the size of maybe like a nickel. It's a little rock. So yeah, I was kind of going through it. And I started, after I got the rock, maybe it wasn't even the rock, maybe it was all in my head, who knows, but this is what happened. I just kind of almost started going through it even more. I just had like little things that were just kind of driving me up a wall. And it just led me to really want to start to travel. I mean, I was on the travel side of TikTok, and I'm still on that. Like, just watching travel TikToks when you're stuck in autopilot mode, it's like torture, because you're like, I just want to leave right now and go on this trip. And also, the year before was COVID, and every single trip that I was supposed to go on got canceled. And I don't know how else I can really put this. I was just itching for the longest time for a trip, but I also had no hope that I was ever going to get to travel, even though, that's obviously not true. I don't know. It was almost ingrained in my head, like every single thing got canceled. And I was like, well, there goes the future of travel. Not going to get to travel ever again. And it sucks because travel is my passion. So I was kind of like, well, should I get a new passion? Like, because I can't do the one thing that I love, right? Anyways, but I wanted to start to travel. I was being driven crazy by so many little things, and I found Workaway, and I started to apply to just random workaways, and for some reason I was really drawn to Hawaii, and I applied. I'm not even kidding. Hawaii on Workaway, for those who do not know. Workaway is this app where pretty much you work for free accommodation, and you can go pretty much anywhere in the world, but you have to apply and you have to go through whatever process it is that that person does. Well, here's a pro tip. If you want to do a Workaway in Hawaii, you are basically asking to, I don't know, for some good competition, because Hawaii is one of the hardest spots to get a Workaway in, and for some reason that was the top of my list. I really wanted island life, so I applied to probably 30 or 40, maybe not 40 might be pushing it, but I think like 30 Workaways in Hawaii, and not a single one of them responded, except for, if they did respond, it was like, sorry, we're booked, whatever. And I had like a really good message. My message was long and it was just talking, I don't know. It was pretty good. But one person did respond, and then they started taking me through their interview process. I was meeting like all of the people that I would be living with. It was just a clean Airbnbs, right? And I was so excited. And then they were finally like having me in like the final stages of the interview process. And right when I thought I got it, that got canceled. So it was kind of like the cherry on top of everything, you know? So I was devastated. And in my devastation, I decided to apply. I was like, you know what? I can't get any of them in Hawaii. They're all so competitive. Where else is an island? And I started thinking, and I'm like, Puerto Rico's an island. And it was the most random thought. I literally think I applied to two, not even kidding, 2 Workaways in Puerto Rico, and sure enough, one responded, and next thing you know, I got accepted. And it was bizarre. I sat there and I remember being super sketched out, because on this Workaways page, it was to be a tour guide for an adventure company, and I was all for it. I was like, that sounds like so much fun, but their pictures were blurry and they didn't have like many pictures either. I want to say there was one picture, which is pretty sketchy if you ask me. And I don't know. I was really sketched out, but I was so desperate to start traveling that I said, you know what? Screw it. Let's go to Puerto Rico. And I knew nothing about Puerto Rico. I did not even know what the capital of Puerto Rico was. I did not know, literally nothing about Puerto Rico, but I just went for it. And, yeah, I pretty much also felt like I had to go alone. And the reason for that is I felt like for the first time ever, I needed to get away from my small town where there's so many eyes on you and so many opinions and just small-minded people, and I just needed to figure out more about myself as a person. So even though my family was absolutely scared with me wanting to travel alone, I felt like it was something that I just had to do. But going back to Puerto Rico, I was very, very sketched out about it, and I cannot stress that enough. If you ask my best friend Katie, she would literally tell you, like, I thought I was gonna die on that trip. I really genuinely thought I was gonna die on that trip, because this Workaway, I automatically got accepted. They did not know anything about my personality, and it had one photo. It was just super sketchy, and they were just like, okay, when's the earliest you can get here? And I was like Hawaii was like the opposite. Hawaii, I had to go through like 4 different interviews. So I was kind of like really sketched out that the fact that I'm not being interviewed for this, they don't even want to know about my personality. Like, they could be accepting a random person, which they are, like, into their hostel. And I was just so sketched out. But I was so desperate, like I said, to start traveling that I went for it. And right before I left for Puerto Rico, I had to, of course, say goodbye to my family. And I was so scared, but I couldn't show that I was scared because all of my family was scared for me. So when I said goodbye to my grandma and my aunt and her kids that I babysat every week at the time, I started bawling my eyes out. And I'm not someone that cries. Me and my friends have actually been doing a cry count this year. Kind of random, but I have cried twice this whole year. And this was the one day that I really let a lot of tears out. I I just bawled my eyes out and cried and cried. And they all just told me, like, stop, you're going to have an amazing time. You're going to prosper. You're going to grow. And I just couldn't stop crying. And I think it was because I was so scared and I couldn't show it to anyone. And that's honestly the truth about solo traveling, is it is amazing, but it is scary. And your first time, there's nothing like it, because you're so scared of everything. I mean, I was scared I was going to miss a flight. I was scared I was going to like lose my luggage. I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to find a taxi, or I wasn't going to be able to speak good enough Spanish, or, you know, the list is absolutely endless. And there's something about having someone there with you that makes all of that go away, or at least some of it. Sure, you can still be nervous, but even if I had my 8-year-old little sister with me, like, somehow that would make me a lot less nervous than traveling solo. And that's just the truth, right? It's not an easy thing to do by any means, but let me tell you, if you do it, you will absolutely prosper. You will grow. You will learn so much about yourself. I just think every single person should solo travel, because it is one of the most beautiful things I think a human can do in this lifetime. And man, I just can't stress that enough. But yeah, funny thing, going back to before I even started traveling, when I got accepted in Puerto Rico, I booked my ticket to San Juan, and I told my mom about this trip after I booked my ticket. So some people ask, like, you're 20, like, how are your parents so chill? Which other people see the other side, where it's like, you're 20, you're an adult, like, you shouldn't even have to ask your parents. But a lot of people back at home were kind of like, how are your parents so chill about this? And the truth is I did not really give them a choice to not be chill about it. I literally booked my ticket, and then I said to my mom, hey, not this weekend, but next weekend, can you take me to the airport? Because I'm going to Puerto Rico for a month, and I will be back in 2 months, because then after that, I'm going to continue traveling. And she literally was like, I think she was literally lost for words. She was not very happy about it, but she also was like, you know what? I know, like, I think that she just knew that I had to go do this for myself. But when we got to the airport, she drove me 4 hours away to this airport, and we hugged, and she cried, and then she got me crying, and she just told me just to be safe. She just said, be smart and be safe. And it just was so sad, because I have never gone. I mean, when I tell you guys solo traveling, this year was like literally the first time I've ever done it. That's the first time I've ever gone pretty much out of the country. I would say, like, I've been to the Bahamas and Canada, but this was the first time really going outside of the country and going alone, and for a whole 2 months, you know, like, my trips before this, my longest one I've ever been on before this was literally probably a week, maybe 8-9 days, if that. But even that is pushing it. I'd say a week was my longest trip before this, and that was like a family trip. So I don't know. I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified. And that is, like I said, that's the truth about solo traveling. I mean, yeah. Also, when I got to the airport, I had a little freak out session, because I was scared that I would lose my baggage and have to reclaim it, because, like I said, I've never really flown alone before, and that was my first time ever having a layover. So I thought with layovers that you had to recheck bags, but you only have to do that if you are in a different country for your layover, and then you're going to a different country outside of that, so you have to recheck your bag. But I had a whole panic attack, and I called Katie, and I said to her, which Katie is my best friend, I said to her, like, I was just freaking out, and her dad was like, Brooke, chill out, like, you don't have to recheck bags unless you're in a different country. And so then after they said that to me, they just told me, like, take deep breaths, and you're gonna be absolutely fine. But I found my flight. I got there, and as soon as I got to Puerto Rico, I had my people text me, and they were pretty much my Ubers. They was the people I was going to be staying with, and they told me, hey, we are doing a night tour right now. Do you want to like wait a half an hour until we are done, or do you want to get a Uber and come now. And then they gave me the address. And I was originally going to do an Uber, but then I saw Uber was like $40 for like a 20-minute ride. And I was like, well, that's so dumb. So I was like, you know what? I'll wait a half an hour. So I sat in the airport and I waited. And then after probably half an hour, 45 minutes of just chilling with my suitcase in the airport, like on my phone, my people showed up in a ghetto minivan, and the guy was like waving his hands out the window. All I could think is, I'm about to get inside the car with these weirdos. Like, I did not know them yet. And then I was also, like I said, I was super sketched out about Puerto Rico. So I was also thinking, like, well, this is when I get kidnapped, right? Like, so I get in the minivan, and next thing you know, I start talking to them, and they were the coolest people ever. They were just so dope. I found out she was my manager for the month, and I ended up not getting the tour guide position, but instead I worked at the hostel. So I worked reception. It was like 4 hours a day. I want to say 5 days a week. And then I got free accommodation. So when I was in Puerto Rico, I literally spent like only a couple $100s for the whole month, and it was amazing. But yeah, when we got back, I met some of my roommates. I remember I was really attracted to this one roommate, but that is for a future episode to come. I just met literally all of them. I got good vibes off of every single one of them. They took me up on the roof, and I got to see the view of San Juan at night, and it was absolutely just stunning. And I fell in love with the roof of Casa Santurce. That's where I worked, and I just fell in love with that roof up there. If you ever in San Juan, Puerto Rico, I highly recommend that hostel. It is a party hostel, and it is so dope. But I'm going to just talk about this one last thing, and that is I met my one roommate, Scott, and he was leaving like 2 days after I showed up. So I never really got to form a friendship with him. But he said this one thing to me that really stuck out. And he was telling me, we like shook hands. I said, hi, I'm Brooke. He said, hi, I'm Scott. And then we just started having small talk. And then he told me like, yeah, I'm actually leaving soon because I'm going to go be a surf guide in Hawaii, like a surf instructor. And I just told him, I'm like, wow, like that is so awesome. Like I am so jealous. That's like amazing. Good for you. And I don't know. I must have just kept saying like, I told him like, oh, I really wanted to go to Hawaii, but I didn't get accepted into any of the workaways. But man, I'm just so jealous. And he looked at me and he's like, don't be jealous. Just go do it yourself. And those words, if any words have stuck with me the whole summer, it is those words. And it was literally from like my first or second night in Puerto Rico that he said that to me. I want to say it was my first night. And it just really stuck with me because now when people text me, like if they slide up on my stories or anything and they say, wow, like you're living my dream life, or like, I'm so jealous, or I wish I could be doing that right now, I like to just tell them like, you could be. Okay, so for any people who are watching the video and not just listening to the audio, you can see that I am now in a new location with a different shirt, and you can just tell it's a different day. And let me just explain something that happened on this last trip that I just took, because now I am home. This last trip, in the very beginning, like right after I recorded the last portion of the podcast, my camera died, and I went to go like plug in my camera battery charger and everything, and I realized that it was not in my bag. And that's when I realized that I left it at the last resort I went to before the one that I was at. And I went through this whole thing where, I wasn't like upset. I was upset, but like I wasn't like letting it ruin my trip by any means, because this is another thing that I'm kind of happy it happened, because this is like another thing. It's a teaching lesson. It just shows you that if travel has taught me one main thing, it's that you have to roll with the punches. And that is something that is so important, because it wasn't even in my list of things to talk about for this podcast. But man, that is one of the truths of solo traveling. And that's not even just solo traveling, that is traveling in general. You have to be able to roll with the punches. And if you are not a person that can roll with the punches, like that can just have something absolutely horrible happen to you while traveling and still continue to travel with a smile on your face, with a look on the day to be excited to start your next excursions and all that, then traveling may not be for you. You know, it's not an easy thing to do by any means. And I'll get into that in a future podcast with some stuff that has happened while traveling for sure. But yeah, I lost my camera battery charger. And so for the whole rest of the trip, I could not record an ounce of footage. And my GoPro battery charger was also not in my pack. So literally, sometimes you really just gotta soak in the moment and look at it as a chance for you to take a step back from your electronics and appreciate everything there in the moment, because that is really what traveling is all about, is living in the moment and just, you know, feeling the leaves around you and smelling the ocean air and soaking your feet in the sand. And that is what traveling is about. It's about appreciating that moment that you're in, every single moment. And that's not just even what traveling, I feel like that's what life is about, you know? And I don't know, I feel like when that happens, where I lose something like an electronic device, I literally try to see it as an opportunity to take in that trip even more through myself. Like, I still think I take it in when I'm like taking photos and videos, but there's something about just standing at the edge of a cliff and just looking out at the view and not capturing a second of it, but just keeping it all in your head. And it's just like, those are the moments that I live for. So yeah, that's just kind of something that happened, and that's why this is a new clip. But yeah, I remember I left off about talking about Scott. And we're gonna get back to that really quick, because that is the final thing I want to like say with this podcast, is that moment. So yeah, Scott told me, don't be jealous, just go do it yourself. And that has been something that I have lived by. And literally, it is so funny how I literally didn't ever really get to know Scott. You know, he was just my roommate for literally a night or two, and then he headed out for Hawaii. I never really had another conversation with him outside of that. But those words have really, really stuck with me. I cannot stress that enough. And just to round up this podcast, just to leave you with final thoughts, final feelings, the truth about solo traveling. You want to know the hard truth about it is, if you wait around for the right moment to come, you're going to be standing there for the rest of your life, sweetheart. You know, if I would have waited to solo travel, not even solo, if I would have waited for someone to go on a trip with me, I would still be waiting to this day. Or I might have just now went on a trip like a year later, you know? So you want to know the hard truth? It's that you can't wait around to live your life. You cannot wait around for others to want to do the things that you want to do. I really, for the longest time, didn't travel because, like, outside of the country, just because, one, I was scared of solo traveling, and two, everyone in my little small town that I live in is very small-minded, and I don't want to like diss on them. It's who they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're small-minded, and they do not seek outside of the comfort zone. And I'm just telling you, like, straight up, if I would have waited for one of my friends to come with me, for one of my family members to come with me, for probably like a stranger to come with me, I'm not even kidding when I say I would still be waiting, probably. Like, the odds are very high that I would still be waiting to go on any trip abroad. So if you want to know the truth about why there's so many solo travelers, or why, you know, like why people do it, it's because people like myself, and I'm not even meaning to toot my own horn or whatever, you know, people like solo travelers have this mindset of, I'm not going to wait around to live my life. I'm not going to wait around until I'm in my retirement to travel when my body is sore and I can't hike a volcano like how I could if I was in my 20s. You know, that is the mindset I have, and I know a lot of other solo travelers have too. And it's so important to just get rid of the fear, because guess what? If you don't go and do it, you'll probably one day be on your deathbed and just saying like, I wish I would have done it. I wish I would have just pushed that fear aside and just went for it. And that's the truth. If I'm gonna like leave this off on one message, it's that if you wait for someone to come with you, you'll be waiting around forever. And honestly, when it feels scary to jump, that's when you gotta jump, or else you'll end up in the same place for the rest of your life. And yeah, that is a wrap on my first podcast. That is basically what I wanted to get out there, and I just hope that you guys did enjoy. And I cannot wait to see what this podcast becomes. All of the roads ahead. I have so many stories that I just can't wait to share. Chaos and lessons and friends and just amazing people I've met. And I just can't wait to really start this podcast journey. So thank you so much for listening. And if you want to follow me more on this journey, if you want to go on a weekly trip with me, then make sure to hit that follow, subscribe. I don't know. What is it, guys? Just hit that button. Because you'll be part of the fam. And I honestly will see you as that. Like, if you're joining on, you're welcome. You're part of the family. Yeah. So thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you guys next week with another podcast.